What you're fixing to view here is a highly extraordinary, unusually event. An event that has brought shame and disgrace upon the ever DHS Department of Homeland Security, beginning with the security ministers on down to your basic law enforcement agencies that set up protection for various government officials. What you're fixing to listen to is an unprecedented act that I can positively say, without a shadow of a doubt, they have brought this upon themselves by becoming who they are today in regards towards Homeland Security no longer doing their jobs. I never would have thought in a million years that I would have been able to have seen this type of embarrassing event that has happened to the USA. But as I sat and watched this with tears in my eyes, I also realized, because of their underhanding events that they have committed upon the various individuals, not just myself, but others who have fallen through the cracks pertaining to the events that Homeland Security has willfully done to various individuals, I can honestly sit back and say, well, they had it coming. They had it coming pertaining to them now walking around with egg on their face. Please listen to this.
High crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States. John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors. John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence. Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors. John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States. Thus incited by President Trump, members of the crowd he had addressed in an attempt to, among other objectives, interfere with the joint session's solemn constitutional duty to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election, unlawfully breached and vandalized the Capitol, injured and killed law enforcement personnel, menaced members of Congress, the vice president, and congressional personnel, and engaged in other violent, deadly, destructive, and seditious acts.
In sedition acts. Now, they're putting the blame primarily on the scapegoat right now, pertaining to Donald J. Trump. Even though this was done in plain view, out of sight in plain view. In other words, they kept daring them, kind of like the person crying wolf. And because we had heard it so many times, we actually didn't think that it was going to occur, including with Homeland Security, including with the people that are in charge, the service ministers and others who now have to walk around with this type of stain and shame on their records. You know, it's not just what the Homeland Security done to me in 1990 in Wheeling, West Virginia, pertaining to a Jolene Nugent and a bunch of corrupt federal individuals working there in Wheeling, West Virginia, that tried to mar me or scar me towards me being some sort of a threat to the United States government, towards going to take out George Walker Bush, pertaining to me being some sort of an assassin. It's not just that event alone that I look at. I look at all the events, from the event that happened right up here in Kenton, Tennessee, to the event that happened in my personal life in Martin, Tennessee, to the event that happened in my life in Dresden, Weakley County, Tennessee. I look at the event that happened in Land Between the Lakes, pertaining to Trigg County, Kentucky, and other counties of Kentucky that made these similar type attacks upon to the founder of the ministry. I look at the events towards what happened out in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as the events that happened in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, as well as the events that happened in the state capital of the state of Tennessee after the governor himself had banned me from all federal resigning affiliations here in the state of Tennessee temporarily for me trying to do the right thing under the Good Samaritan laws. As far as I am concerned, they have brought this totally upon to themselves, pertaining to this great shame and this disgrace that now we all can sit back and say, you brought this upon yourselves because of the illegitimacies happening in various departments towards trying to ruin individuals' lives. And I'm just not speaking to myself and about myself in regards to the Windmill Ministries. I'm talking about thousands of people's lives since Secret Service has been institutionalized, I guess since President Lincoln, towards various people that has said the wrong thing, or they was a bit emotional, or they tapped around on the computer, and we're talking about the youngest of the young to the oldest of the old, in which some of them was valid. Some of them needed to be black marked. Some of them needed to be hurt. But not all of them. Not all of them. Pertaining to how that they have ruined individuals' lives simply because they are the big dogs. Well, we see now how the big dogs have made a mess out of various agencies pertaining to the event that happened January the 6th in the year 2021, that basically the whole world was a witness thereof. It's one of the most saddest, horriblest events. It's demoralizing to most American people that watch this because they realize that something obviously has went wrong from the inside out, from the top, not from the bottom, but from the top. Because whenever you have these type of breaches, to the point that now you're having to charge one of the head leaders of your industry or your association or your administration, whenever you're having to charge him with these type of charges, it's self-explanatory that something has incredibly went wrong in these institutions and these departments that has brought this incredible shame upon to the American people. Let's watch the rest of this as it unfolds, because it is history being made, but it's bad history being made pertaining to the actual events that now we're all being a witness of and being a part of. It's disgraceful, but we have to watch it. It's distasteful and disgraceful, but we have to watch it because, once more, these are the events that actually happen. These are the charges formally being charged to the president, the leader of the free world. Please listen and watch carefully to my viewers.
Congressman Raskin of Maryland, the senators who will serve as the jury will be sworn in tomorrow. Think of this odd note of history. Most of the members of the Senate jury are also witnesses to the crime. They were led to safety during the criminal looting and desecration of their chamber, including some of their desks. Patrick Leahy, the longest serving Democrat in the Senate, and that makes him president pro tempore of the Senate, is expected to preside over the trial scheduled to get underway the week of February 8. The 2-week delay allows both the president to build out his defense team and Democrats to assemble their prosecution strategy. Washington Post puts it this way: one idea under consideration to produce a video that highlights how the rioters reacted to Trump's remarks that day and shows footage of the violent mob inside the building. House Democrats have informally discussed with their Senate counterparts their desire to call witnesses during the trial, although, as with the video evidence, nothing has been finalized. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke with Rachel Maddow today about the coming trial.
Was President Biden involved in advising you at all on what he wanted in terms of the timing of the trial?
Yeah, we talked to the president, and he feels an urgent need. He feels there has to be the trial like we do, but he feels an urgent need to fill some of these cabinet positions.
You say it's going to be a fair trial, but it's going to be fast.
Relatively.
How long do you anticipate it taking?
Well, we'll see. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's a need for a whole lot of witnesses. We were all the witnesses. It's different than the previous trial.
Different than the previous trial. The previous trial that made a mockery out of the United States government whenever they knowed without a shadow of a doubt that Donald J. Trump was trying to strong-arm the leader in the Ukraine government. Now, combined with that on top of this, is bringing that much more shame to the American people's name. Once more, how are other people in other places of the world viewing this tonight as they see formal charges being brought to the leader of the free world in regards to this? I think personally the bottom line was that the Senate had no choice in doing something because of the mockery that had been made in regards towards people knowing, not just thinking, not just maybe coincidentally having an ideal, but people actually knowing the history of Donald J. Trump in all the appearances that led up to this point in time before he walked away in being the president, the 45th president of the United States. Other people will look at this in other parts of the world towards being the damnedest thing that they had ever had to experience in watching, which will bring and plant a seed of doubt in a lot of those people's hearts and in a lot of those people's minds, to the point that they'll wonder, because of America being so insecure, unstable, they'll wonder, how much do we need to associate ourselves with this particular country that's acting this way in the future? This could affect supply chains. This could affect agreements that has already been signed off on towards different policies that could change how people view us and how people see us. This goes beyond anything pertaining to the Blackwater or the Nixon ordeal or the Watergate ordeal. This goes beyond that, because this is internal. this is going on within us, okay? Which you look at domestic terrorism versus foreign terrorism, and you think, well, foreign terrorism is worse than domestic terrorism. Not from a prideful perspective, it is not. From a prideful perspective, from an institution that's supposed to have its act together, it's actually the other way around. Whenever something like this occurs in a government, it's actually worse than being attacked by a foreign force. The reason why it's worse by being attacked by a foreign force is because now the force is within. And now the festation, the damnation, the realization is coming out towards just exactly how it's festering from among ourselves. Whenever this occurs, it puts or plants a seed into our adversary's head or into their heart, providing that they got one, by saying, the Americans, they didn't have their act together like they said that they did. Proof is in the pudding towards the reflection of what is going on today in the USA. It makes us more vulnerable, more susceptible to being attacked by foreign forces because they realize that there's a breach. And anytime there's a breach, there's miscommunication. Anytime there's miscommunication, there's trust issues. There's validation issues. That all leads to high crimes being committed by various individuals. And like I said, they're going to use Donald J. Trump as an scapegoat by saying that he brought all this on. And if the truth be known, this was not brought on by just one person. What we're talking about here is a group of adults. We're not talking about children. And we're talking about accountability issues. You know, just because I was on my way to Washington, D.C., pertaining to me knowing that the only way that Ronald Reagan accomplished what he accomplished was because of the Holy Spirit working through my testimony of 9 tapes that wound up at the White House. Simply because I was on my way to bring transparency and expose this, I had a government that was willing to break all laws and violations after that it had already violated me the first time in Madison County, Tennessee, down by Jackson, Tennessee, as a Secret Service agent watched Madison County local jail, local law enforcement agency throw me in jail over a sword that was as dull as I don't know what, that probably couldn't cut probably hot butter, that wound up charging me for a weapon of being dangerous. Even though it took them almost 30 minutes to pry the instrument, the tool, the teaching aid out of the box. And then on top of that, after me protesting openly in Madison County at their courthouse, they violated my rights again by grabbing me up and throwing me in Western State in a mental institution. Once more, I had been branded not only by a local government right here in Northwest Tennessee, pertaining to what went on in Kenton, Tennessee in my particular life in 1983. Now I'm being violated by the upper government pertaining to Homeland Security that put this order out for them to stop the ministry, which is a violation of my Constitution pertaining to religious rights, freedom of speech rights. So as I watched this unfold at the age of 59, realizing that all this started basically in my life at the age of 27, 27, 37, 47, 57. I'm now 59. Almost 53 years later, I'm finally seeing a full circle of just exactly what type of idiots that I have been dealing with since the 9 tapes went to the White House in 1988. Since I made the telephone call to the White House in 1983 pertaining to the Antichrist. I can honestly say, sitting back as a civilian now, as an individual, I can honestly say that these people had it coming, pertaining to bringing this type of embarrassment into these organizations, these higher level of federal organizations or institutions. Is it sad? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the saddest thing that I could ever imagine that would ever happen to the United States. Do I wish this upon to my own people? Absolutely not. No, I do not wish nothing like this upon to our government or upon to any part of the United States, because it's disgraceful, it's shameful, and it shows a breach, it shows weakness, it shows instability on every level that you can think of. But at the same time, in me witnessing this, I can honestly sit back in the corner towards saying, 90 boo-boo, you had it coming. And like I said a while ago, it's not just my particular life that they have abused. If you'll follow the dots and look it up pertaining to Homeland Security issues, in which it's hard to find because they do work in secret societies. But if you'll follow the dots, it's not just 1 or 2. It's not just 100 or 2. It's thousands of people's lives that these people have ruined, simply because these people wanted to voice their opinion of how that they felt either about their government or how they felt about different things that was being run by their government. These people was penalized and punished for voicing their opinion about their own government. And now today, we realize out of all those thousands of people's lives that was ruined because of them doing their patriotic duties in their Good Samaritan laws towards telling them where they was messing up and telling them how insecure and insufficient that they was being. Now it's all come back full circle towards a illegitimate department or illegitimate departments of the DHS as well as the Homeland Security Ministries that has failed, absolutely failed in every way imaginable towards bringing stability and security to our great land. You wonder how come that we continue to see retribution come from the heavens pertaining to weather events that are unlashing out upon to our great land? Wonder no more. Wonder no more. You wonder how come that they have pulled God out of schools and pulled basically God out of our courtrooms. And you wonder how come we're seeing what we're seeing as far as these afflictions that has fallen upon to the American land. Wonder no more. Wonder no more. You wonder how come that it is such of a breakdown in regards to our churches over here that are going in 50,000 different directions. That seems like in ways they're contradicting each other, even though they're only supposed to be supporting and holding up the only begotten Son, which is Jesus Christ of Nazareth, God's Son, who died upon the cross. That is only one person that done this. You wonder how come the churches are being dissipated, are being scattered, are being destroyed. It's simply because of the eternal affairs that has been going on and is going on pertaining to our United States government that has now become an official mockery to the rest of the world.
That man from New York, the new majority leader, rejects Republican arguments that the impeachment trial is unconstitutional because Trump is no longer in office, calling it instead an issue of accountability. Former president's efforts to change the results of our 2020 election are also the focus of a Justice Department Inspector General investigation. The IG, now that they're allowed to investigate things again, is looking at whether any former or current officials engaged in improper efforts to have the DOJ change the election's outcome. The move comes after Friday's stunning New York Times report, since confirmed by NBC News, that Donald Trump plotted with a justice official to use the Justice Department to force Georgia state lawmakers to overturn its election results.
Did you hear what that just said? Let's back it up. Let's back it up in case you didn't catch that. Let's listen to this.
For efforts to have the DOJ change the election's outcome. The move comes after Friday's stunning New York Times report, since confirmed by NBC News, that Donald Trump plotted with a justice official to use the Justice Department to force Georgia state lawmakers to overturn its election results.
To overturn the will of the people. And you wonder how come we got almost 3 million incarcerated prisoners, either in federal, state, or local jails, whenever you have the Department of Justice that is operating this way. And it's not just being done by various federal officials, but it's also being done through state and local officials that basically have cherry-picked towards who they're going to attack, who they're going to brand, who they're going to brand for life as far as calling them the bad guy, and who they're basically going to let go in not having any type of criminal charges placed up into their lives. You know, it's the damnedest thing whenever you get to looking at Jimmy Baker, that was the minister of PTL, that swindled so many people, him and his wife, out of millions and millions and millions of dollars, that had to go to jail for 5 years, rightfully, and their punishment towards how that they swindled the American people. They bamboozled the American people. But yet now we'll see affairs and events happen, not just with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, not just with what went on with the Ukrainian people, but we'll see events like this to where the main perpetrators walk away without any type of punishment. Once more, we're talking about a system here that is punishing good behavior in calling it bad, and rewarding bad behavior by calling it good. The very exact same thing that happened to the Davidians in 1992 down in Mount Carmel, Texas, outside of Waco. Whenever a group of ATF agents purposely entrapped a group of people with a bunch of guns, knowing that they was dealing with weak-minded, paranoid people. We're dealing with a government that is dirty from the inside out, that begins at our courtrooms, that begins with the people wearing the black robes. We're dealing with an inadequate, insufficient government that is now starting to eat its own. But yet now we'll see the results that usually, I ain't making no type of prediction here, but usually the main perpetrators will walk away scot-free, or even better than that, the people that was engaged in this will actually get rewarded by getting advance pay or moving to higher positions to be able to, I mean, when is the American people going to stand up and say enough is enough pertaining to the inadequacies of a Department of Justice that is nothing more than a mockery, beginning with the upper head, now going all the way down to the lower head? It's self-explanatory. Whenever I moved back here in 2014, and David and I was concerned about 3 children using the Good Samaritan laws of what was going on across the road, and finally, because of a inflicted family that was meth motivated, flipped it around because of a corrupt justice system in Weakley County, that now to this day I got to walk around for the first time being branded as a felony. And if I look at all the patterns of what has occurred in the life of the ministry since 1983, I can actually say this is exactly what they was wanting to do in my particular life, especially since 1989, whenever I was pulled over by Homeland Security in Madison County, and they charged me for a deadly weapon pertaining to the sword symbolizing peace on earth. I can actually say that is what they intended to do from the get-go, was to try to brand me, scar me, of not just being crazy. Because whenever the events happened in my life in 2005 up here in Martin, Tennessee, towards them charging me with falsifying files, they was going beyond just trying to charge me with somebody that was mentally incompetent. They was actually trying to treat me as if I was a threat to my own people. Now, today in 2021, realistically, who is the threat to their own people? Realistically, who has dropped the ball? Realistically, who is not doing their jobs pertaining to dereliction of duty? I'll let my viewers do their own picking and choosing towards what is going on here pertaining to the American affairs that is now reeking into the eyes of the world towards just exactly what type of people that these people truly are. It will take decades, years, before we finally erase or diminish this stain away from our credibility. It will take years before this has finally been dealt with appropriately in the eyes of justice. Like I said, you can look at our history going back to the assassination of JFK and Martin Luther King, of how that a group of people is acting so unprofessional and unprofoundly the way that they're acting. And you wonder how come we've got the coronavirus that's now wreaking havoc upon over 3,000 people a day. And now there's another mutated virus that's even like 7 to 10 times more aggressive than the original virus, that, yes, does have tendencies of being more lethal that now is knocking at our back doors and our front doors too as well. You don't have to be an Einstein to figure out that apparently something has happened incredibly wrong with society or various societies that these harsh things is occurring up into their lives. You don't have to be an Einstein. You don't have to be a very educated person to realize that the fault falls upon the feet of those that has been in charge of these type of affairs to begin with. Once more, they talk about peace, but as they're talking about peace pertaining to the white man with the forked tongue, he turns around and spends over $6, not billion, but $1 trillion on a war pertaining to the Iraqi war of Saddam Hussein that had no bombs of mass destruction, and God only knows at the fatalities in the arms and the legs that they lost. We're talking about a society that obviously is sick. Not only are they sick physically, but they're sick emotionally. They're sick psychologically. And most importantly, they're sick spiritually. Even as God had predicted in the first 3 chapters of Revelations, to repent, 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 or else I will throw thee off into a sick bed once more. If you cannot see that we are in a sick environment in regards to all the affairs, going back into the assassination of JFK, of what America has turned out to be towards same-sex marriages, the freedom to be able to kill unborn children, to the birth control pill, to the free love culture movement that happened during the 60s and the 70s pertaining to Woodstock. If you can't see it with your own eyes that this is a very, very sick, toxic environment, especially coming from the Americans. It would be different if we was talking about a banana republic somewhere down in South America, Honduras, Belize, somewhere in Mexico or in India. No. We're talking about the Americans that always dresses up and tries to act dignified. Well, let me ask you a question. How dignified are we today? How dignified are we in watching this unfold right in front of our very eyes pertaining to the Department of Justice?
Overturn its election results. The 2 weeks until Trump's Senate trial means there's increasing pressure on the new Biden administration, which, as you heard the majority leader say, is trying to build out a cabinet, get a nearly $2 trillion stimulus bill passed, while also trying to pull off a mass COVID vaccination program.
See, what it does, it's so much stain and so much pain and so much horror, to the point that this man's administration right here is probably going to be affected, and it will be affected in a negative way to the point of even drawing his image down in making even it that much more harder for Mr. Biden and Ms. Harrison to straighten out this mess. One thing affects another thing. It's just like a pair of dominoes that's falling. Once one thing has showed itself in such of a unorthodox way, it affects every other aspect of anything that's coming in there towards trying to make itself look good, towards straightening out the problem. It affects even their decisions towards making the things that they're trying to do that much harder. Once more, we have to look at what type of dignity do we have now, since now our promises towards us being dignified are being broken. It's shameful in watching these occurrences happening to my own American people here in America. It would be shameful enough if we was watching this happen to Honduras. It would be shameful enough if we was watching this happen in places like Brazil or Mexico or India or Africa. But we're talking about our own people here amongst our own home, in our front yards, in our backyards, pertaining to our local, state, and federal government.
Today, the Senate did confirm Janet Yellen to be Treasury Secretary. By doing so, she's now the first woman to ever serve in that post. The Biden stimulus bill proving to be more challenging. Earlier today, the Senate Minority Leader offered this assessment of the chances.
I now know why the community, by and large, has not come to try to make amends, to make some sort of restitution in regards to the founder of the Windmill Ministries. They're too ashamed. The Neals, the Cobles, the Mackrights, the Smiths, the Simmonses, the Nelsons, the Bakers, the Willises, the Whites, the Coopers, the Halls. No wonder they haven't stopped by here and tried to make any type of amends in regards towards what has occurred here. They're too ashamed. Shame has now stained our name towards what kind of greedy, selfish savages that we really are. Once more, what type of dignity is this? And if we're willing to sell out and basically go south towards selling our dignity out in little bits and pieces here and there throughout history, what will it take the next time to sell us out? What will it take the next time to bring that much more unprofoundly ungodly shame into our lives? It's kind of like the movie Pale Rider, whenever the guy had struck in gold and they was trying to move that group of people off the mountain, and they all had to make a decision towards up and picking up stakes and leaving because the hood had made a good proposal. What will be the price of their dignity next time? Their pride towards who they really are, which goes back to the reflection of what Ronald Reagan said about not only the 1,000 points of light, but the time capsule, that what in the world are they going to say about us or think about us 1,000 years from now, 500 years from now, 100 years from now, or even 5 years from now? What is the rest of the world going to say about us? I'm going to give you a quick hint towards what they're saying about us right now. This weekend was one of the most horrible times that Russia has ever had, towards 90,000 people standing up, protesting against their government, moving over 7 or 8 time zones, even people that was protesting in areas that was 130 to 150 below zero, that was still coming out and protesting against their corrupt government. I'm going to tell you what the Russians is saying. The Russians are saying that we helped to influence that type of environment that now is reeking up onto their land. They're blaming the American government for this. That's right. They're blaming the American government for their mishandling of their affairs with their people over in Russia. That's what's going on. That's the truth of the matter. This is not some sort of imagination or some sort of metaphor that I'm talking about. These are actual facts.
The new administration's first draft of their sprawling proposal misses the mark, and press reports make clear this is not just a Republican view. Multiple Democratic senators agree that it's not the right path forward.
But President Biden seems nowhere near ready to give up on getting Republican support.
I have been doing legislative negotiations for a large part of my life. I know how the system works. What I'm going to be doing, and we've already begun, is making it clear to the leadership in the House and the Senate, as well as the group of 16, bipartisan group, and saying, here's what I'm doing, here's why I want to do it, here's why I think we need to do it, and what kind of support can or can't you give to that. I don't expect we'll know whether we have an agreement and to what extent the entire package will be able to pass or not pass until we get right down to the very end of this process, which will be probably in a couple weeks.
He's probably already overwhelmed and horrified towards coming into a mess by looking how things was mismanaged and mishandled by the administration that he's replacing. But towards being the president, now you have a full view of just exactly what is occurring and what has occurred that's demoralizing your own people. If the truth be known, this guy here has a burden placed upon to his shoulders such as none other president has ever had. Even the president of Lincoln during the Civil War. And the reason why I say that is because as a civil war is looming here in America, this man is trying everything that he can of preventing it from happening. That's the reason why he is begging for the Senate, for Congress, to pass this stimulant package that will at least put a Band-Aid on the problem temporarily until we get out of the problem that the coronavirus has now placed up into people's lives. In other words, now we're dealing with double jeopardy or triple jeopardy. In other words, this is jeopardizing everything. It's putting everything on the back burner. And if we don't watch, eventually in other countries, it will affect supply chains towards what we are used to getting today. We may not get tomorrow. We may not get it tomorrow for various reasons. Either the people got so sick that they couldn't no longer supply it, or they've lost interest in wanting to deal with the Americans, and now they rather sell their products to somebody else on the other side of the world versus selling it to us. And don't say that it can't happen, because whenever you're dealing with these type of irregularities happening to a country, the other people, regardless whether it's the Russians, the Canadians, the Filipinos, the people wherever, they'll start asking their questions. Well, we don't want that type of irregularities happening to us, and they'll steer clear from us. It's just like any major corporation that I've ever worked with pertaining to a major big body shop chain. Usually whenever they wind up losing a estimator or somebody in the upper tier of that business, they'll back away from them. They'll back away from them for 90 days or 6 months just to see if they still got a good footing in doing what they're supposed to be doing. That way, once the insurance companies becomes obligated to that particular company, they know that that company is going to come through for them. It works the same way with countries selling products and doing business with other heads of state. It works the same way.
President also continued to issue more executive orders today. One of them repealed the Trump administration ban on transgender personnel serving in the U.S. military. Another requires government agencies to purchase more products and services from American workers and business and industry.
Now, in God's perspective, looking at it from two different perspectives here, pertaining to the righteousness of God, we know that these homosexuals that's involved in the military, or even lesbians, that according to God's plan, this is wrong according to the Bible. I guess for some unforeseeable reason, they're trying to bring stability to the United States military in unifying our soldiers. I'm not going to comment on whether or not I think this is a good idea or a bad idea. In other words, I'm going to plead the fifth in keeping my views to myself, because we've already dug a great big hole for ourselves, and if we don't watch, we'll even dig a deeper one.
But the new administration says our uncontrolled pandemic remains priority number one. There have now been over 25 million confirmed cases, nearly 423,000 souls lost to the virus in our country, while the acceleration of daily cases and the death rate appears to be slowing down. Minnesota health officials have now confirmed the first known U.S. case.
Appears to be slowing down based upon the original concept of the original coronavirus. Now, since the new version of this coronavirus is merging in various places, this whole picture could change in a twinkling of an eye, to the point, instead of it getting better, it could actually go the opposite direction towards it getting worse. Whenever you're dealing with a migrated germ that is now starting to attack not just the elderly or the mid-class, but now it's attacking children, that's 7 to 10 times more potent, pertaining to it being aggressive, and also towards the facts that's coming out of the UK that it's also more deadly. If these things come to America like expected, instead of these matters getting better, they could actually change and get drastically worse. Now, I'm not one that wants to preach doom and gloom to a society, but I am a straight shooter, and I do want to be honest and upfront with the facts, with the science. And from all indications, we got another hurdle or two to go over pertaining to this coronavirus before we even begin to think that we're out of the woods. And these hurdles, these challenges, could absolutely be mind-boggling. They could be more painful than what we ever thought we would see. If there's ever been a time that we needed to unify and get our act together, just as the teachings of the Bible talks about, for I have not yet found thy works perfect yet, to go back and do thy first works over again. If there's ever been a time that our preachers and our teachers, our evangelists, needs to start teaching and preaching on against sin, pertaining to the righteousness of God, it is today. Because I'm telling you, we as an American society are more vulnerable right now, being more susceptible of something even horrifyingly worse than what we've ever thought about sneaking up into our lives, is now knocking on our doors. If there's ever been a time that we needed to soul search our own personal lives, regardless whether you be in the Bible Belt area or you be in the East Coast, the West Coast, the North, or the South. It is today. It is today because perilous times has become apparent that could intensify. God only knows how much more, in addition to the extreme weather events that is lashing out again and again and again in regards to global warming. We're going to have to wake up as a society if we're going to be a successful, thriving society. We're going to have to wake up and look around and see the signs and realize, oh my God, I can't believe that we done that or we're doing that.
Of a more contagious variant originally found in Brazil.
See what I'm talking about? A more contagious variant.
White House officials say they still don't have a handle on the exact number of vaccines in our country as more communities report supply shortages. Despite all of that, the president says he is confident the nation can exceed his pledge of 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days.
They're now starting to question whether or not this same antidote is going to be effective with this more aggressive disease that has mutated from the original COVID-19 coronavirus. They're now questioning if this vaccination is even going to be effective in eradicating this newer disease. And just like the Dr. Fauci or whatever his name is, said that today that the vaccine may have to be upgraded. In other words, they're liable to have to add something to the vaccine to be counterproductive against the virus that has mutated. How many times has this virus mutated? Well, as of right now, we know that it's mutated only once. But before this is over with, this thing could mutate 2 or 3, 4 or 5 different times. We have no earthly idea what we're staring at and how long that this could be affecting our lives. We want to believe and hope that we see light at the end of the tunnel. In the unisons of hope towards believing that things are going to get better. But I'm telling you right now, science and the facts are pointing in the opposite direction. Towards, instead of us seeing light at the end of the tunnel actually has gotten darker. If you look at the facts.
I hope we'll be able to increase as we go on until we get to the 1.5 million a day. That's my hope.
My question was at what date or roughly when do you think anyone who wants one would be able to get it? Is it summer? Is it fall?
Oh, I know. I think it'll be this spring. I think we'll be able to do that this spring.
With that, let's bring in our leadoff guests as we start a new week on this Back to Work Monday night, starting with our eyes and ears on Capitol Hill, where the days are long, the nights are short, but he is very tall. NBC News correspondent Garrett Hake. Neil Katyal is back with us, former acting Solicitor General during the Obama administration, who has argued dozens of cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. And Ashley Parker, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist with the Washington Post, who we welcome back tonight. While congratulating her on her well-deserved promotion, she will be referred to hereafter as Washington Post White House Bureau Chief. How about them apples? Good evening and welcome to you all. And Ashley, indeed, befitting your new title, I'd like to begin with you tonight with what may be an unanswerable question, and that is, how tight remains the grip of a twice impeached private citizen sitting in Florida over the grown men and women on the Republican side of the U.S. Senate?
It is still an unanswerable question. One thing right now that is contributing to that is that Donald Trump, and it seems so simple and obvious, but doesn't have his Twitter feed. And that has very literally silenced him. So, on the one hand, you are seeing sort of reluctance to get to, it seems like, 17 senators to convict him, Republican senators, in an impeachment trial. There's no one who really wants to defend his behavior on January 6th. So you're seeing some objections on procedural grounds, questions of can they really impeach a former president? Is this the best approach to unify the nation, is what Republicans are saying. And you're seeing the president trying to find ways where he can have an impact, whether it's we expect him to endorse Sarah Huckabee Sanders for governor of Arkansas. He played in the Arizona state chair race now that Senator Portman is resigning. He sees a big role in Ohio, but he hasn't actually done any of that yet. And so until we see if he's just sort of quipping and needling from the sidelines or quipping and needling